together on our knees. Let us break bread together on our knees. When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun, oh Lord, have mercy on me.
Welcome to the Bible Speaks with Elgin Kerlock. The Bible Speaks is a weekly ministry of Harvest International. Our prayer is that the Bible Speaks will encourage you in your study of God's Word. You will be able to contact Elgin at the address given at the end of this broadcast. And now, here's Elgin.
Brothers and sisters, I welcome you from wherever you are, whenever you're listening, and whoever you are, to the words of inspiration. This week we have been having discussion on the topic of God's got you. And continuing in that, we are looking at Isaiah 59, verse 19, which reads, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him." Isaiah 59 verse 19 is a verse that speaks to the power of God to deliver and protect his people from evil and oppression. The verse is often translated and understood within the context of God's intervention on the behalf of the Israelites, addressing their spiritual and moral decay as well as the consequences they faced because of their sin. The verse reads, depending on the translation, along the lines of, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against it." Reading from the NIV. This verse, nestled within the passage that describes the sins of the people and the separation those sins have created between them and God, shines as a beacon of hope. Here's a breakdown of its components and implications. Number one, universal recognition of God. The reference of fearing the name of the Lord from the west and his glory from the rising of the sun to the east implies a universal acknowledgement of God's sovereignty and power. It speaks to a future time when God's dominion and majesty will be recognized from all corners of the earth. Number two, the enemy's assault. The imagery of the enemy coming in like a flood evokes a sense of overwhelming force or attack. In the context of Isaiah, this could refer to literal enemies that threaten the nation of Israel or symbolize an inundation of sin, injustice, and unrighteousness that overwhelms society. Number three, divine intervention. The most hopeful part of this verse is the promise of God's intervention. The Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. This suggests that when evil comes to prevail, God himself will raise a banner of victory and gather his people, providing a way of escape and protection. The standard or banner symbolizes God's presence and power to save and deliver. When Isaiah describes the enemy coming in like a flood, he uses a powerful metaphor to convey the overwhelming and sudden nature of the attack or threat posed by the enemy. Floods in the ancient Near East, as in many parts of the world, are catastrophic events that can wipe out crops, homes, and lives without little warning. They were overwhelming forces of nature that could change the landscape entirely, leaving devastation in their wake. In this context, the imagery serves several purposes. One, overwhelming force. Two, suddenness and surprise. Just as floods can rise quickly and without much warning, the enemy's approach is depicted as sudden and unexpected, catching people off guard and testing their readiness and resilience. Pervasiveness. A flood covers everything in its path, leaving no place untouched. Similarly, the enemy's attack is portrayed as pervasive, affecting all aspects of life and society. Number 4, destruction and despair. Just as floods leave destruction and despair in their wake, the invasion of the enemy threatens to bring about spiritual, moral, and potentially physical ruin. Yet within this stark imagery, Isaiah introduces a note of hope. Despite the formidable, fearsome nature of the enemy's assault, God's intervention is powerful enough to counteract and overcome it. The Spirit of the Lord will raise a standard against the flood, providing protection and salvation for his people. This contrast between the destructive power of the enemy and the saving power of God highlights the theme of divine deliverance and the ultimate futility of opposing God's purpose. It reassures the faithful that no matter how dire the situation, God's sovereignty and ability to save is greater still. So, brothers and sisters, be encouraged, be of good cheer, be bold, and know that God's got you. Until next time, God bless.
I've wandered far away from God.
This program is cared for by listeners who care. Your prayers and financial investment in this ministry helps to keep the good news on the air. We look forward to hearing from you and invite you to write us at Harvest International, Post Office Box 6690, Ocala, Florida 34478. Again, that's Harvest International, Post Office Box 6690, Ocala, Florida 34478.